Hello. So today we'll be discussing the disaster management. So before discussing the topic, I want you go through the previous year questions. So we'll analyze the pattern of the questions. Okay, from which area the questions have been asked. Okay, and based on that we'll be doing the topics, because disaster management is a very broad area. So there is a complete ARC on the crisis management. So you can read that entire ARC also. Earlier, okay, when people used to prepare, okay, way back in 14-15, they used to read the entire ARC, but again, no question used to come from there. And later on, people started reading a lot of NDMA reports there also there is no question. So let's analyze previous year questions, and not only for this subject, for any subject, if you want to do well in the mains or prelims, you have to analyze the previous year questions. It's very important. So we'll see a pattern over here. So if you look at the question which has been asked in 2025, okay, it is talking about the seawater intrusion. The seawater intrusion is a type of a disaster. And here they'll be asking what are the causes and what are the remedial measures. So whenever they'll be talking about a disaster, they'll be talking about the causes and consequences. So as a bureaucrat, as a civil servant, you have to identify what has led to, okay, what is the cause, and you also have to give the remedial measures. Means you also have to be the problem solver. So you have to put yourself in the shoes of a civil servant, and then you have to answer these questions. So disaster. Look at the question in 2024. This question is on disaster resilience, and this will come as a part of the disaster management cycle. Means disaster management cycle has various aspects, can have 10 aspects in that. So you'll be having means what should be done before the disaster, and what should be done during the disaster, and what should be done after the disaster. So this is part of disaster management cycle, and a very good explanation regarding this disaster management cycle is given in the ARC report, also in the NDMA report. So I'll be extracting the notes from there and I'll be giving you. Next, one more question which has been asked in 24 is regarding the urban floods. Again, you'll see a pattern over here. They're asking about the causes, okay, and they are asking you to take the two case studies, and obviously the policies. So when you'll be studying, so you should be studying all the types of disasters and what has led to the disaster in India, specifically in India, and what can be the solutions, and if any guidelines are there given by the government of India or NDMA, you should also know that. Next, dam failures, causes, and 2 examples. You see a pattern. Next, cloud burst. Okay, here they are asking the mechanism, means little bit of technicality, and 2 examples, 2 case studies. Next, coastal erosion, again causes and effects are asking, and coastal management techniques they are asking, means again solution. So these are the guidelines which are given by the government of India. Again 21, again a disaster, landslides, asking the causes, and national landslide risk management strategy, means these are the guidelines given by the government again. Again same, earthquakes, examples. Similarly, okay, so recent measures taken by the government of India in overall disaster management. If you look at the 19, they are asking about the vulnerability, means how this comes under the philosophical aspects again. So that also we'll discuss. So this has been given. Now what is the difference between a crisis and a disaster? Okay, so how vulnerability will play a very important role. So this has been given in the ARC report. Not many people nowadays read these ARC reports. Next, hazard zonation mapping. Again, this is part of disaster management cycle. So Sendai framework, Hyogo framework, these are part of the international laws. Tsunami, again causes, effects, remedies, and NDMA guidelines. 16, again urban floods. Again cloud burst, earthquakes, drought. Okay, that year the drought has been declared as a disaster. So regarding that, they have been asking. So if something is there in the current affairs, then you should know about it. Then pre-disaster management. Now if you see here, there's a pattern. So the pattern is this. So most of the questions are about the disasters. So you should know everything about a disaster, and in a disaster you should know what are the causes of disaster, remedies, or any guidelines which are given by the government of India. Okay. Next, policies. So policies can be national policies, international policies, such as Hyundai framework, Yogo framework, etc. And third is part of the disaster management cycle. Here they can ask what should be done pre-disaster. That is about preparedness, mitigation, etc. So these are the three areas from where the questions are being asked. So I'll discuss a little bit of everything here. So firstly, so since we have seen, okay, the previous year, so this is the notes which I'll be giving you. So all the previous year questions you can also write. So have been mentioned here. Now let's see. So one of the previous year questions have been asked regarding what is the difference between a crisis and a disaster. Now let's understand what is this crisis. This crisis can be any small situation which can be turned into a disaster. A crisis can be more rainfall. A crisis can be an earthquake. A crisis can be a cloud burst. A crisis can be embankment breach. A crisis can be anything. But the crisis will be converted into a disaster if you are more vulnerable. So we can write a formula here, that is crisis into vulnerability becomes a disaster. Now how it can escalate, how a crisis can become a disaster. The first thing can be, okay, the weak institutions. For example, during the COVID-19, okay, the second wave, there was a crisis. There was lack of oxygen cylinders and there was lack of the beds in the hospital. So this is a crisis. But how this crisis has been converted into disaster? See, the government was unable to anticipate how many patients will be coming to the hospital, how many beds have to be provided. So even in case of emergency, the hospital, okay, how many beds it should be having, and how many oxygen cylinders can be provided. So a small crisis has led to a very big disaster because we were vulnerable. We did not have enough beds in the hospital. We did not have enough cylinders in the hospital. So this is one of the examples. Next, socio and economic vulnerabilities. The people, okay, poor people will be having less access towards the healthcare infrastructure, education, insurance, etc. See, generally, the poor people, they live in the margins of the ecosystem. That is, they generally settle in the low areas of the city, means low-lying areas of the city. They also settle near the drainages. They also settle near the lakes, around the lakes, or near the river. So these are the margins of the ecosystem. So whenever there is excessive rainfall, the people will become excessively vulnerable. The poor people often settle on the embankments also. Means on the bank of the river they have their settlements because they cannot afford high rents in the cities. That's why they'll be living in the margins of the ecosystem. So that's why if they are socio-economically vulnerable, then a small crisis can lead to a big disaster. Here I want to give you an example also. See, for example, okay, it is raining. So for the high-rise buildings, a rainfall can be a very beautiful day. They'll be sitting in the balcony and sipping coffee. But for the poor, it will be flooding their homes. So if you are poor, if you are vulnerable, okay, then a small rain can also turn into a disaster for you. Whereas for the rich and affluent, okay, it can be a pleasant weather. So this is socio-economic vulnerability. Next, environmental vulnerabilities. See, if you are destroying the environment, if you are doing deforestation, then a small crisis can also be turned into a disaster. For example, look in the Wayanad. So because of the deforestation done by the people for the tea estates, a little bit of more rainfall has caused a lot of landslides in that area. and the entire area, entire system has been collapsed. We can give one more example of Joshimath here. See Joshimath, if you see the Joshimath, okay, this area is settled, okay, on the foothill of the mountain. So debris has fallen from the mountain, and this rock and debris of various sizes that did not settle, means in between the rocks there were a lot of spaces. So on this they have done the construction, and whenever there is excess rainfall, the water will seep inside. So whatever soil is there, it will get into these spaces, and the soil will become unstable, and that has led to the land subsidence. And it is because of the environmental vulnerabilities. We have destroyed the environment. So you have cut down the forest along the slopes, or you have gone and settled in the riverine floodplains, or you have gone and constructed homes on the unstable topography or unstable bed or the limestone beds. So this is the environmental vulnerability. Next, the lack of crisis communication. For example, in case of Bhopal gas tragedy. So the people in the factory knew that the disaster is going to happen, but communication, okay, facilities, a network was not there. The people were not given early warning. So that's why we are unable to evacuate those people from the vulnerable areas. So this is also because of lack of communication. For example, in the Odisha super cyclone 1999, almost 30,000 people died. But the later cyclones, in the recent cyclone which happened in Odisha, even in the super cyclone, for example, in Falin cyclone, the deaths were hardly in 2 digits. Around officially around 28 people have died. So why this has happened? Because there was communication infrastructure. The satellites were able to track the cyclone. They are able to analyze what is the speed of the cyclone, what is the speed of the winds. Then the district collectors, in the Odisha and other parts of AP, they were communicated. And these collectors, district collectors, and the entire district administration, including these IPS officers and all, they went house to house, and they asked people to evacuate, and they were taken to the cyclone shelters. So that is how a lot of lives were saved. So here the communication plays a very important role. So next kind of vulnerability can be cascading effect. So one disaster will be leading to the other types of disasters. So for example, there is a flood in an area, there is a tsunami in an area. So whenever there is a flood, a lot of animals will die, there will be water everywhere, a lot of area will be inundated. And when there is a lot of moisture, and of course India is a tropical country, you will be having temperature as well. So it will become a breeding ground for a lot of diseases. So the dead animals, water, moisture, flies, mosquitoes, virus, bacteria, this all will breed and they will be affecting the people. So that's why the people will become excessively vulnerable to waterborne diseases and other communicable diseases during that time. And during that time, if your public infrastructure such as your hospital is overburdened and you don't have say oxygen cylinders over there, you don't have enough beds over there, again it will lead to one more disaster. So this is a domino effect. A small thing will be falling on the bigger one and the bigger one will be falling on the other bigger one. So this way, this will lead to cascading effect. This is also one type of vulnerability. So other types of vulnerabilities can be the homes built in the seismic zones, low savings, because one disaster is enough. So most of the middle class in India are one disaster away from falling into the BPL line, one hospital bill away. So degradation of forest, wetlands, etc. So this is a previous year question which has been asked. The vulnerability is an essential element that defines the disaster. So this is how we'll be dealing with the notes, and also I have given the sample answers over here. So you have a definition over here, the same things which you have discussed, has been written here, and then examples, and then some flow charts which I have discussed here, and then Types of vulnerability such as physical vulnerability, okay, this you have discussed. Social vulnerability. So whenever you're writing an answer, you should be giving headings, side headings, and then explain the entire scenario. And don't overdo the things here. A small explanation is sufficient enough. So write as many dimensions as possible and provide as many keywords as possible. So anyways, I have discussed the entire notes. Here, I have explained in terms of the keywords, okay, in terms of answer. Now, what can be the solutions for it? So, whatever problems you have discussed, the opposite to that will be the solutions here. For example, okay, vulnerability assessment mapping. So, which areas are more vulnerable? You should be having a mapping. Means if you have a city area, okay, which areas are more vulnerable to the floods? Which are the low-lying areas? Which areas are near the margins of the ecosystem? Okay, should be able to map them. So not only in terms of areas, but also you should know in which areas you have more poor people. In which areas, okay, you have more elderly population, because at the time of the disasters, the elderly, the children, the pregnant women are worst affected. The government should be having a data of all these things, and it should be able to map, and while doing the relief and rehabilitation and rescue work, okay, the government should go and act, or the agencies of the government should go and act in these areas which are highly vulnerable. That's why the government should be having the map. Right. Next, whenever you are designing the policies, it should be inclusive, because disabled people that during the time of disaster, they won't be able to rescue themselves, okay, very fast, and gender also becomes quite vulnerable. So in any type of disaster, okay, including the recent Karur stampede also, the women die more, the children die more. Next, improving housing and infrastructure, okay, awareness campaigns, strengthening institutional and financial framework. Okay, these things we'll be discussing in more detail later on. So this is how the questions will be asked. The second type of philosophical discussion here can be, is a disaster sudden or creeping? So what do you think? The disaster happens all of a sudden, or it is a slow onset of the disaster? So many people might be saying that disaster is sudden. So disaster will become sudden only when you don't have the pre-preparedness. For example, you might say that, okay, suddenly there was a cloud burst and the rainfall was around like 30 mm overnight. So that's why, okay, we are unable to rescue the people. So the institutions might be, will be coming up with such kind of excuses. But before the disaster strike has hit your area, so why didn't you clean the stormwater drainages? So why didn't you evacuate the people from the low-lying areas? So why didn't you cut off the power lines, okay, when there is going to be heavy rainfall? So why didn't you alert the people? Why didn't you communicate the people that there is going to be heavy rainfall? So why all the activities are still functioning, okay, when there is going to be heavy rainfall? So all these things should have been taken care before the disaster. So the disasters might appear as they have happened all of a sudden, but the underlying causes are there from a very long time. So they have been neglected from a very long time. Only very recently, the institutions, the government is constructing a lot of stormwater drainages in the cities. So before that, either they were existent, but the maintenance is not taking place. So this can also happen. So that's why, though the disasters are said to be sudden, but the underlying causes are lying there from a very long time. So that's why the disasters are creeping. So they are not sudden. So already the question has been asked, between the vulnerability, and the disaster. Already one question has been asked, but this question hasn't been asked. In the future, the UPSC can ask this question. So are the disasters sudden or creeping? So you should be able to answer in such a way. So now, okay, since this is a demo class, I am not explaining everything here. So next question can be, are disasters natural or anthropogenic? So are disasters the man-made or the disasters now let's see, are disasters anthropogenic or the disaster are natural? So when you're talking from, okay, laymanish point of view, so these disasters like the earthquake, cloudburst, volcanism, etc., they might seem quite natural. And some disasters you can categorize as purely anthropogenic in nature, such as the dam failures, nuclear accidents, or okay, industrial accidents, so these are purely anthropogenic in nature. But even these disasters are anthropogenic. Though the underlying causes are natural, but they are anthropogenic disasters because, for example, let's take the earthquake. Now, before the earthquake hits an area, there should have been an early warning system. Obviously, okay, there is no advanced early warning system for the earthquakes, but indirectly, okay, we can have some kinds of seismic sensors, at least near the faulting zones. So we will be able to have seconds of advantage over there. In future, it can be developed further if you do the tomography of the earth. So this is one, okay, a kind of early warning messaging, okay, it should be going to the people. Secondly, why the people at the first place have settled in excess numbers near the earthquake zone. For example, you have a earthquake zone 5. So why did you allow multi-story buildings over there? So why did you allow buildings which does not have resilience against the earthquakes? At least of a Richter scale 9, 10, okay, you should be allowing the buildings there, or else you should not allow construction at all. Why you have built 4-lane highways in the Himalayas? We are excessively prone to the earthquakes and they are also vulnerable to the landslides there. So earthquake is natural, but so earthquake we can say it's a crisis. Now if you are linking this topic to the previous topic, so earthquake is a crisis, but how this crisis has become a disaster? So it has become because of the anthropogenic factors, these factors, anthropogenic factors. Same goes to the cloudburst and volcanism, okay, later on we'll discuss this. So again, this type of thematic question can also be asked. Are disasters natural or anthropogenic? Okay. So this can be one area from where the questions can be asked. Next, there is a disaster management cycle, but before discussing disaster management cycle, I want to discuss some of the disasters here, because only when you discuss the disasters, you will be able to understand the disaster management cycle. Means what should be done before the disaster, what should be done during the disaster, and what should be done after the disaster. Okay. So everything is there in the question and answer format here. You don't have to worry, so that your efforts during the examination will be very less. So when you have a ready-made notes, if you are able to identify the themes, then it becomes very easy, and also you will be able to target the newspaper and current affairs very well if you know the pattern of questions which are being asked in the examination. Now let's see the earthquakes here. So let's take the first disaster here, earthquakes. So the earthquake is nothing but it is the shaking of the crust. Now shaking of the crust can happen because of various reasons. The shaking of the crust can happen because of heavy construction also. It can happen because of mining also. It can happen because of the meteorite attack also. So it can happen because of hydraulic fracking, means it's a method by which you extract the shale oil. The reasons can be many, okay, but the most probable reason behind the earthquake is the collision of two plates, and it mostly happens near the plate boundaries such as the Himalayas. So these things you must have studied in geography, right? So this is what the earthquake is. Now this is, and 58% of total India's landmass is vulnerable to earthquake. So this is the earthquake mapping or zonation of India. Now let's see the Himalayas. The Himalaya region is in zone 4 or zone 5. Now there are certain regions in zone 5 here. For example, you have the entire northeastern Himalayas. The entire northeast is in zone 5 because the Indian peninsular plateau, okay, this I am not explaining too much because I hope that you have learned these things in geography. So the Indian peninsular plateau, while it was moving towards north, means towards Eurasia, it is rotating in the anti-clockwise direction like a door hinge action. So that's why the most of the forces are acting in the northeast. That's why the entire northeastern region is stressed. So excessive stress is there. So that is also the reason why, okay, you have abrupt rise of the eastern Himalayas, and this is the part of the middle Himalayas. Okay, so this is the Dhauladar in Himachal Pradesh, Pir Panjal range in Jammu and Kashmir, and Garhwal and Kumaon ranges in Uttarakhand. So these are excessively vulnerable, okay, they are in zone 5 because of all the ranges of Himalayas, the great Himalayas, middle Himalayas, okay, and the lesser Himalayas. The middle Himalayas are excessively stressed because these are excessively folded, the compressional force is very high, they undergo severe faulting, and they also have nappy structures. These things you must have studied in geography. So that's why, okay, they are in zone 5. Now here again, the Bhuj region in Gujarat, okay, why this is in zone 5? Again, see, you must be getting doubt that the faulting, the plate boundary is here along the Himalayas, but why the rest of the regions are also in the earthquake zonation? See, the plate boundary should be in the earthquake prone region, but the rest of the India is mostly made up of batholiths, means stable rocks. It should not be having earthquakes, but still it has earthquakes. Why? Because, see, I'll tell you one example. So, see, for example, my leg is broken, my leg has a fracture. In reality, I have a fracture now. See, if I'm going and hitting this panel, so these two are hitting, my shoulder and my panel is hitting. So wherever the impact takes place, wherever I'm hitting, okay, obviously, okay, that will be having some kind of damage, right? But if I go and hit the wall with my shoulder, obviously there will be damage on my shoulder, but also there will be damage on the knee, which is already fractured here, because that impact will be carried. The same fashion, this Indian landmass, though it is made up of batholiths, though it is made up of stable rocks, but still it has some local faults. Local faulting is there. Though the hitting is taking place here, though the Indian peninsular plateau, while it is moving towards the Eurasia, okay, the entire impact is taking place here, but that the impact will be carried in the rest of the subcontinent as well. So that's why wherever you have this local faults, there also the impact will be felt. There also the disturbances can happen. So this Bhuj region, okay, this is part of the Allaband fault, which has been created very recently, matlab in geological history. It has been created in 1811. So suddenly there was a faulting in this region, and this is a recent fault. So that's why it is in a zone 5. And okay, rest of the Himalayas are in zone 4 because they are made up of sedimentary rocks of marine origin. So they are highly, okay, they are loose soil, okay, they are made up of sediments. So that's why, okay, whenever there is little bit shaking of the crust, obviously, okay, the things will collapse, and that's why it's in zone 4 of the earthquakes. And some part of the North Indian plains, including the Delhi NCR region, is also in zone 4 because, so whenever, okay, the Himalaya, imagine it as a patthar or a stone, and the North Indian plains are like soil. The stone is there, soil is there. So whenever the stone shakes or vibrates, the soil will also get disturbed, which is beside it. So Northern Indian plains are sediments like sand, okay, and the Himalayas is like stone. So whenever there is a disturbance in the Himalayas, okay, you'll have a disturbance in the soil as well. So that's why part of the Northern Indian plains, and also because of some local faults here, okay, that's in zone 4. Now why, okay, a region in Maharashtra, okay, in the northern part of Karnataka, it's in zone 4. It is because it is a junction of two faults. Two faults are meeting here. One is the Koyna fault, other is the Kurduvadi fault. And the junction of these two faults, we have built a dam called as Koyna Dam. So obviously, okay, when you have built a dam, okay, in the fault, the water will seep in, okay, it will go and weather the rocks over there, the fault will aggravate, and whenever the fault aggravates, okay, to the square, the damage will be there. So these are the various reasons, and okay, the rest of the regions in zone, okay, 3, okay, these are things in yellow. It is because, see, these are related to the faulting, okay. Here you have the Damodar faulting. Again, you know, most of the faults in India have been occupied by the rivers. So this is the Mahanadi faulting, Godavari, Krishna, Pennar and small rivers, and entire Western Ghats is also faulting, Narmada, Tapi, Mahi, Sabarmati. So most of the rivers, almost all the rivers in the southern India, in the peninsular India, are flowing in the faults and joints. So that's why these old faults and joints sometimes can get activated, leading to faulting, leading to earthquakes. Okay, I forgot to mention here, the Andaman and Nicobar group of islands is also in zone 5. Now let's take some of the example here. So whenever they are asking about disaster, they always ask about the case studies. So whichever disaster we'll be taking, okay, we'll be doing, okay, some of the reasons why, okay, the earthquakes happen, 2-3 case studies, and then we'll also go through the solutions here. For example, if you take the Bhuj earthquake, which happened in 2001, okay, the magnitude is 7.7, number of deaths were 13,800. So what is the reason here? So building code is not being followed. Means whenever you are constructing a building, how much, okay, what should be the, okay, width of the staircase, how many lifts it should be having, okay, how many rods, okay, should be used in the building, how much free area should be there, okay, inside the building, okay, in how much space the construction should be there. So this is all part of the building code. Often building code is not being followed. Whenever you construct a building by the civil engineers on the part of the government or the MCD, okay, they will come, okay, inspect the structure, skeletal structure. After that, you go on building a lot of, okay, rooms, okay, whatnot, okay, inside that. So often the building code is violated. And unreinforced concrete structures. So even if you see today, okay, most of the buildings in Delhi, they do not use pillar and beams. बस ईंट के ऊपर ईंट डाला, building construct किया, 3-4 मंजिल. Obviously, it will be highly vulnerable to the earthquakes. There's inadequate, emergency response and coordination. At the time, okay, the Disaster Management Act was not made, and people in India hardly knew what is a disaster during that time. So that's why the number of deaths were very high. The buildings collapsed, okay. the disaster management response force to reach the area. It has become a very long period of time, and there was no enough training during that time because the NDRF force was not formed during that time. So a lot of things were there. That's why the toll is very high. There's Latur earthquake 1993. Again, the magnitude is 6.4. Again, the deaths are 9,700 here. So this was in low risk zone 2. But still, the number of the deaths is very high because most of the houses are made up of stone, which have collapsed. So there was lackness of awareness, and people also did not know what to do at the time of the earthquake. For example, if this building is there, say it is about to collapse, then you'll be having this initial tremors. That is, initially the P and S waves will come. So at that time, you should not fear. So P and S waves have come. You should understand it's initial tremor. You should know that the earthquake is going to come. So after the shaking has stopped, because after P and S earthquakes, there will be like 3 to 4 minutes or 6 minutes, 7 minutes time will be there for the rest of the waves to come, love waves and relic waves to come. So during that time, that's a golden hour. That's 6 to 7 minutes. You should know how to evacuate out of the building. Say the 40 people in the room, the 40 people in the room should know how to get out of the room without blocking the way. What kind of pattern they should form, what kind of queue they should form. Should they go in a straight line or should they go in spiral? So that they can safely exit out of the door. So if you are unable to evacuate out, you should know which part of the building is the safest. So wherever you'll be having a pillar and a beam, so that part of the building is very safe. So wherever you have this pillar and beam, to that area, take a table or chair or something, and your surface area should be as less as possible, and you should go and hide below that. And also, wherever your classroom is there, house is there, you should be having some emergency food, water you should take along with you and keep there. So that, after the building has collapsed, the rescue team will come and find you. They will take you out. So you should not get panicked. You should know, how to rescue yourself. So this is part of the community, based management. So for this, enough mock drills have to be done. At the community level also, people should know what should be done at a time of disaster. So let's take the third case study, Nepal earthquake 2015. The number of deaths is around 100 in India because the epicenter is far away. This sort of was near Kathmandu. So why the India becomes highly vulnerable? Because lack of seismic microzonation. So macrozonation we have done, which you have just seen just now, but microzonation also you should know. So which area in your city is highly vulnerable at time of disaster? Where granitic rocks are there, where the sedimentary rocks are there, you should know. Based on the rock structure, you'll be able to know which is more vulnerable. Now, whichever areas you'll be having high risk, the building should be retrofitted. Means, say the building has been constructed, the people don't have enough money to demolish the building and construct a new building, but at least the retrofitting can be done. So later on, reinforcement can be done. You can put the iron rods and cement concrete to make the previous structure more tough. And the community level training, they should be done. The people should know how to rescue themselves, how to cooperate each other at the time of a disaster, during a time of disaster, and right after the disaster also, so that they'll not become more vulnerable. So illegal constructions, right? In India, we have this, wherever you want to go and construct, you'll construct. You'll go and construct a house, inside the river valley and say, right, river view, hotel, river view home, something like that. So there is no proper law and order which is not being followed. So that's why the illegal constructions are more, and obviously the building code is not being followed. So solutions, reverse it. We'll discuss in more detail what can be the solutions here. So what should be done during a disaster? So these things you have discussed. So evacuate only when the shaking of the building stops, etc. And also, you should know, okay, that we should be staying away from the windows, okay, shelves, etc., or heavy furniture, because the heavy furniture may fall on you, the windows may crack and glass will fall on you. That's why you should be staying away. So people should be having this awareness. And what should be done after a disaster? So after disaster, okay, so you should be sending the NDRF, okay, rescue, okay, the debris should be removed as soon as possible, because the people inside will be having very less food, water, and also less oxygen. So that's why the debris should be removed as soon as possible after disaster, and people should be rescued. You can also use sniffer dogs to identify where the living people are. And medical team should be deployed as soon as possible, because you have to give the emergency health care during that time. And fastly you have to rehabilitate, and the people have lost something, compensation have to be paid. So this is all part of the post disaster. And mainstreaming earthquake as a part of disaster risk management, and strengthening the local governance, because the local government is the first responder at the time of a disaster. Because when a disaster strikes in our area, in a gully, in our street, okay, the NDRF will not be coming from Delhi, okay, like ASAP. So local policemen, local firemen, or local community people will be there. So they are the first respondents, and they should be sent first, and that has to be institutionalized. They should be having enough funds, not only okay for the relief, okay, rehabilitation, rescue, but also for the mitigation efforts. Means after the disaster and before the next disaster strikes, what kind of activities they should do. That's why local people should be empowered, local institutions should be empowered. And this will also reduce the corruption to a very large extent, because when the things are done locally, the local people, okay, for example, your local ward member will be there. So the local ward member is answerable to the people over there. The funds are given to the local ward member, and if the funds are meant for cleaning of the stormwater drainages, if that work is not being done, the people will go and question that ward member. The people will not dare to go and question an MLA or MP. So that's why again, okay, the spirit, okay, again these things are very systemic in nature. You have to change, okay, you have to actually implement all the things which have been said in the 73rd and 74th Constitutional Amendment Act. So strengthening the local governance, okay, and use of technologies, okay, more details, okay, we'll discuss later on. So this I have given a small overview. So next kind of disaster is the urban floods, but okay, I'll not be discussing much here, since okay, this is a demo. So this is how I will be going through. Obviously, okay, when the kids will be there based on the questions, okay, based on their aptitude, okay, I'll discuss, okay, more and more. So this is how I will go about the course. Okay, I hope, okay, you have liked my video, and any kind of changes are there, any kind of things you want, obviously, okay, your notes is very good. So I'll also, okay, implement whatever things, okay, you say, I'll add those things also, okay. But again, okay, the broad framework, okay, which I have drafted, I think you liked it, because this I have drafted on my own, okay, based on the previous year question, okay, analysis, and have read the NCERT crisis management report also from there, and some NDMA what reports also were taken, all this and included, okay, over here. So I guess such kind of notes, okay, these notes have been made for the people who have appeared for the mains this year. But if it is a foundation batch, then okay, I will do it more elaborately. Okay, thank you, and okay, I hope we'll get